We're going to look at CBS Sports.com's quarterback tiers. This was put out by Jason Lockenfora. Baker Mayfield was Tier 2, top pros proven winners. That's up from Tier 4 a season ago, where you can win with guys like them. Now, in that same tier, Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, Ryan Tannehill, Dak Prescott. So one notch below the franchise quarterback type guys, which seems pretty legitimate as Baker's ascended a couple tiers, if you will.
Right, and based on what we saw from really Thanksgiving on last year, that's kind of where Baker planted his flag. No pun intended there. That's kind of where Baker planted his flag, is like, this is where I belong. If he plays like that for 16 games in his fourth season, you're going to see him start to flirt maybe with that Tier 1 level. I'm a little surprised, and I don't know if it's because of the injury or what. I'm a little surprised that Dak Prescott is in Tier 2, because I think Baker right now at this point in his career is similar to some of those other guys. Obviously, Matt Stafford is more established. You know, Ryan Tannehill has been fantastic in Tennessee, and I think Baker is certainly on that kind of track and a similar offense. I'm a little surprised that Dak Prescott is in Tier 2. That's the one guy that I would maybe argue with in this tier. And you know, if you want to pick nits, maybe Baker's like the top of Tier 3, but I'm fine with him being Tier 2.
Yeah, and again, I think more than anything, let's see what happens when he gets in the same offense for the second year. Let's see. I have a sneaking suspicion that's going to make a big difference with a quarterback like Baker Mayfield. So that Tier 1, bona fide franchise quarterbacks in 2021. Lamar Jackson is in that tier, as is Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, and also Justin Herbert. He also says Deshaun Watson, I guess, will be in this tier if he plays. That was a side note to that. Again, I get it with Lamar Jackson. He's got to go to the next level and win a playoff game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that group is too big. I think that group should be a lot smaller. And, you know, I love Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert might be the best quarterback from that draft class last year, and I'm also a big Joe Burrow fan. But let's see Justin Herbert do it in year 2, you know, before you throw him in that tier. I'd put Dak Prescott in that tier. I'd say the same thing about Josh Allen, right? Took big steps last year. Now let's see him build on that. And with Lamar Jackson, I know it's really divisive sometimes to question whether Lamar Jackson is that franchise Patrick Mahomes level quarterback. It's just like it is with Josh Allen and some of these other guys. But I just think Lamar Jackson still has some things to prove. Now, if I'm Baltimore, I'd extend him. I'd keep building around him, and I'd keep running my offense through what he does best. Because as we saw in that Monday night game in Cleveland, he's incredible. But let's let him progress a little bit. I would just shrink that group. I'd make it Mahomes, Brady, Rodgers, Wilson, Dak, and that's probably where I'd draw the line. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but I think I would probably draw the line. Oh, and, you know, Deshaun Watson if he plays. Same caveat there. But then I draw the line after those guys.
Yeah, and again, I'm with you on Lamar Jackson. He does a lot of things well. He's got to do a little more damage from the pocket, because if he starts to add that to his arsenal, that's a big problem for defenses. You know, right now you try to keep them, you hem them in from the outside, and you try to make them, you know, beat you. And he hasn't been able to do that. This one is really interesting, though. So way down at Tier 6, which is good luck, is where Ben Roethlisberger ends up. And he was a Tier 1 bona fide franchise quarterback a season ago. So that gives you, and if you think about it, they started out 11-0, and we know how that ended.
Yeah, it just felt like Ben sort of needed to be propped up a little more, right? As that season wore on, he just started to look old. And even if you look at that Browns game, that Browns playoff game where he ends up throwing for 500 yards, they were such empty stats. It's like a basketball player on a bad team who just puts up points night after night. That's what that playoff game felt like with Ben's stats in that game. I'm not very, you know, I talked about earlier how I love the Chargers and Justin Herbert. I'm like the exact opposite on the Steelers. I'm out on the Steelers. I think that really last month and a half of the season last year, and then that playoff game against the Browns just completely soured me on the upside of that football team. Still a great defense, still some weapons on the outside. I just don't know if Ben has the ability to carry a football team like he used to. Now, I don't know if I'd put him in that good luck tier, like the worst of the worst quarterbacks in the league, but I don't know if he belongs in the top half of the league.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say, that if they fix their offensive line, Najee Harris, really good running back, that will help Ben Roethlisberger more than anything.
Yeah, they just didn't have much of a running game with James Conner. He ran the ball well against the Browns all the time, and he did pretty well against the Bengals, but unfortunately that was about it. I think the running game always starts with the offensive line, but when you can add a dynamic back like Harris, and we know the Steelers, like organizationally, we know they're a strong organization that knows how to build a football team. And Mike Tomlin has never finished below 500 in his career. I don't know that it's going to happen this year either, but that doesn't mean the Steelers are going to be, Super Bowl contenders. I could see them going 9-8 and being on the outside looking in when all is said and done.
Yeah, that I would agree wholeheartedly.